everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. So my name is Allison. I'm one of the Youth Services librarians here for Vaughan Public Libraries, and I'm very excited to welcome everybody to our presentation today. This is a presentation, part of our Passport to Vaughan series, and today's topic is going to be Japanese in manga, which we're very excited to let everybody know about. And first, a little bit about the Japan Foundation, who has really graciously offered to partner up with us today to help cover this topic. So the Japan Foundation from Toronto is a cultural organization that promotes cultural exchange between Japan and the rest of the world. So throughout the year, the JFT runs exhibitions, film screenings, lectures, events, and language classes, and also houses a public lending library, both physical and digital. I've seen the library, it's very cool. For anyone interested in Japan and Japanese culture, where you can find Japan-related resources and works by Japanese authors in English, Japanese, and French. So the foundation does a lot of great work and is located right in Toronto. So yeah, very much encourage everyone to check it out afterwards. And so we have a very special presenter today. We have Mr. Alan Fong. And Alan is a Japanese teacher in the York Region District School Board. He also works behind the scenes at TVO, promoting online learning best practices, policies, and procedures. So he holds a Master in Applied Science and a Master in Mathematics for Teachers, with a research focus on finding better ways to learn beyond the traditional classroom at the secondary and post-secondary level. And outside of work, Alan is an avid fan of manga and assists with translations and typesetting for fan series as a pastime. So everyone, please join me in welcoming our presenter today. And thank you so much. Take it away.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you very much, everyone, for coming today and taking a precious 1 hour of your weekend for a hopefully fun little presentation about learning Japanese through manga and media in general. And I see some of you have already introduced yourselves in the chat already. That's wonderful, and lots of love for anime and manga. Great. If at any point you have any questions, please feel free to throw them into the chat. I'll do my best to answer them. And if you have any questions, and if it seems like I might not be answering them immediately, it might just be because I am waiting for a good stopping point to do so. So your thoughts, comments are not ignored. They will be answered eventually. I ask that everyone just keep their mics off at the moment, but if there will be an opportunity to share your comments, your feedback, and to ask questions towards the very end. Before we get started, are there any burning questions? Let's come in with a positive mind, and we'll get started in 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second. Let's begin. First, today, quick little agenda of what we'll be going through on this afternoon. We'll have a quick primer to what manga is, whether you are on your 300th chapter of your favorite series and waiting for the 301st chapter, or if this is your first time even hearing of the word manga, then we'll still give you a fulsome overview of what that is. And as you may know, manga does originate from Japan. So we'll see how possible is it to learn Japanese through manga, or if it's not possible to learn Japanese, can we get any inkling towards to the Japanese culture, language, and all that sort? We'll take a quick look at translation versus localization. If you're not familiar with either of these two words, that is A-OK. We'll take a look at that later today. My goal by the end of this presentation is to hope that you'll be able to decipher the difference between translation and localization. We'll do a quick debrief and feedback session at the very end as well. Let me just get my my keyboard out. Go. Okay. So let's get started. Oh yes, we have an extra time activity if there's extra time, but let's see how things go. First, I'd like to ask everyone, I'd like to pose a quick question to everyone in this call right now. Do you speak another language other than English or languages? We might have some polyglots, someone who speaks more than 2 languages. And did I say quick question? I actually meant 2 quick questions. If you speak a different language other than English, how does it differ from English? I'm curious if you can just throw it into the chat. No, hey, that's okay. If you just know English, that's totally fine. I hope that Japanese could potentially be a second language for some of you. Anyone else? Any other languages? Trying to learn Japanese? Great, thank you, Allison. Chinese past tense may not be as apparent as English. Thank you. I think that was quick and to the point. Right? Do you speak another language? Yes, Chinese. And do you speak, and what's the difference? It is that the past tense may be different. Great. This will not be a full grammar lesson, so don't worry, not here to bore you with all of that, but we will get a little bit of insight on that as well. Vincent, you speak French and Cantonese. Well, c'est merveilleux. Wonderful. I speak of the Korean, great. Sorry, I don't know Korean, but that's great. Chinese, great. Korean, a little bit of Japanese, only English, great. And I speak a little bit of French and Korean and English. Wow, 3 languages. Excellent. Learn some French at school. The difference is the masculine and feminine. Yes. Some love that distinct how the masculine and feminine nouns are distinguished. Others not so much. Japanese and French. Wonderful. Wow. So quite a variety. That's great. So for those of you who do speak more than 1 language, as we go through this presentation, perhaps you'll be able to gain some insight on how Japanese differs from English and perhaps how Japanese differs from the other languages that you have mastered. For those of you who are purely Anglophones and appreciate English, I'll be going from that lens primarily to show you the difference between the language that we're speaking right now and Japanese. But of course, we're going to be doing it through a fun way, through Japanese manga. 次のスライドですね。Manga, or perhaps Japanese comics, is what we'll be talking about today. Some of you may be familiar with Western comics, such as Spider-Man and Batman. I'm not partial to Marvel, DC, or any particular bande dessinée. But my question to you is, manga, is it a comic book? Is it not? And if it is, how can we make that distinction? If it's not, how is it different from something like Spider-Man or Batman or whatnot? Linda says manga is not a comic. And what makes you say that? There's something different about it, isn't it? Is it the art style? You read from right to left. Yes, that's definitely a difference. Mangas cover more genres than comics. That's an interesting point. Is that true? I think at least recently, manga's definitely covered a lot more genres. Comic books, there are some niche comic books that do explore more a wider breadth, but I would suppose that manga does bring more genres to the mainstream. So that's good. Really, the main difference, though, whether you say it's the art style or the way of storytelling or whatnot, the main thing that differentiates manga from comics is the following. Usually for comics, you might have multiple groups, multiple artists working on this series and whatnot, whereas you usually have one artist or team for a manga series. Right, so once again, this presentation is not sponsored by Marvel or anything, but I will use Spider-Man as an example. You have many different Spider-Man movies and comic books as well. One of the more recent comic books, sorry, one of the more recent movies was mangaka. Yes, mangaka is the artist, right? So Spider-Man, one of the most recent movies, brought back like 2 of the other Spider-Men from the other movies or whatnot. So it's kind of a crossover. But those previous works were done by different people, by different artists altogether as well. So it was kind of like a crossover, which is always very exciting. But usually when it comes to a manga series, it's usually the same mangaka, right? The same author or artist as well. Yeah, Ju, in your case, it usually refers to the author. The author could also be the artist as well. So that's why I say one team. It usually could be a one-person band, or sometimes it's an entire group or team. But they're rather consistent when it comes to who creates material, who creates official material for that particular series. With something like Batman, it gets rebooted many times with different artists and different authors behind the wheels. Someone also mentioned this before, reading from right to left. Oh, sorry, before that. Japanese characters are read from top to bottom. That's a little different from what we see in English. So for example, this is manga. So manga, which is your comic book series. The panels themselves usually read from right to left, top to bottom. So we have like a set of panels like this. It will read from right to left. So right to left, so it'll be 1, 2, then we go down to the right, to the left, to the right, to the left, to the right, sometimes to the left. If there are multiple panels on one side, it'll be 3, 4, and maybe a 5 here, 6, 7, like that. So slightly different from comic books, bande dessinées, or any other cartoons you might see in, say, even the newspaper or whatnot. Modern localized versions tend to follow this pattern. Okay. Probably circa 1998 to 2000-ish, when a lot of manga series were being brought over to the West, to North America. There was some localization changes, okay? And I know I've thrown out this word around many times already, and I haven't quite defined it yet, but we'll take a look at translation and localization later. But localization roughly just means, how do we create or rather modify a certain medium such that it pleases the local community? You may notice that if you have any, if you go to, say, like an Indian restaurant nearby at your local town, and you're not in India, for example, then the taste might be a little localized, which means that it caters to what the local folks may prefer, whether that be adjusting the amount of spice, for example, or anything like that. With manga, it is no different. There, at the very beginning, no one was sure if manga would really catch on outside of Japan, outside of its supposed niche market, even within Japan. Yes, it was popular. Did everyone read it? Not so much, but it was present. Right? So what did they do? They tried to localize it so that readers in North America, who are used to reading from left to right, top to bottom, the panels themselves instead would be mirrored. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like that. Do we have any artists or budding artists even in the chat, in this presentation, in the chat? Well, I'm horrible at drawing, but if you flip if I even try and draw a circle, it doesn't look very nice. If you try to flip the image of my circle, you'll realize, okay, Alan-sensei really can't draw because it's not symmetrical or anything. One problem with this localization was that when these images were flipped, the art looked a little off, right? Because the art looked perfect in one certain screen. But if you were to flip it horizontally or vertically, it just didn't look the same way that the mangaka originally wanted. So eventually, in the early to mid 2000s, as popularity grew, actually, it was closer to late mid 2000s to early, mid 2000s to late 2000s, where a lot of the series kept the localized, the non-localized versions. They follow the same pattern of reading from right to left, from top to bottom. So if you were to go to any bookstore now, right, Indigo, Chapters, sorry, I'm not sure of any bookstores in Brooklyn, Jinda. Barnes and Nobles. Yeah, if you go to your Barnes and Nobles or Indigo or Chapters, I'm sure you'll be able to find any modern manga series to also read from right to left and from top to bottom. And the benefit of manga, oh yes, and your library, my apologies. Sorry about that. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, please also check your local library and support your local library by checking out their wonderful breadth of manga series that they have. Thank you very much. And by looking at, by reading manga, it's not just a comic, right? It actually might give us a glimpse at Japanese language and culture as well. Before I continue, do we have any questions or comments so far? No, not going too quickly? Wonderful, then let's continue. A few more curious questions. Probably the big burning question from many of you today. Can you learn Japanese from manga? And by extension, can you learn any language from just consuming a medium? And can you ease the learning process by leveraging off of your English mastery? What does that mean? Well, let's go through each question one at a time. Can you learn Japanese from manga? Well, I don't have the answer to that, actually. You will hopefully be able to gather your answer towards the end of this presentation. Vincent's already confidently saying, yes, yes, we can. Well, I'm confident, I'm hopeful that you might be able to through that. By extension, can you learn any language from just consuming a medium? Maybe, maybe not. I think personally, you may want to have more than one medium. Like go beyond, if you're learning Japanese, for example, go beyond manga. You might have anime as well. You might also have radio, dramas and things like that. Or even books at your local library, or any other type of media, right? Maybe not just one. Maybe not just learning through one medium. And can you ease the learning process by leveraging off your English mastery? Okay, this is the linguistic nerd in me creating this question, so I apologize in advance if none of this makes any sense. If you're able to, if you have the will to learn another language, can you learn, not from scratch, but by leveraging off of, or by making use of what you know about English already in your learning process? All these answers to all these questions and more, hopefully in the next few slides. This brings us to a very big, very general overview of the differences between English and Japanese. I know we may have some a breadth of learners in this call right now. We have some who have never touched Japanese before. You may have picked up like a manga from your local library, took a read through it and thought, oh, that's pretty interesting. But you know, there's no, it's written in English. So maybe you haven't had any exposure to Japanese. And some of you may be already very, maybe you're very fluent in Japanese already. And that's wonderful too. So I hope you can, wherever you are on that spectrum, I hope you can learn a little bit from this slide. Or if you already know all this, I hope this is a good review as well. English. English has one writing system, and that is the Roman alphabet, right? That would be your 26 characters from A to Z, or sorry, for our American participants, A to Z. How many writing systems does Japanese have? Does anyone know? Any guesses? I'll give you a hint. It's probably more than one if I'm asking about that. 3. 100. Wow, 100 would be quite a lot. I'm already. I can barely learn 3. 6. 6 question mark 10 2. Well, lots of answers. 6, 2, 10, 100. Hut. No, just kidding. 4. 4 is one way to look at it. Japanese, I'll say it has 3. Okay. English speakers, so Anglophones, such as yourself, may begin to learn with a 4th one as well. But let's take a look. All the sounds. Oh, there are many sounds as well. So there's hiragana, aiueo. Hiragana is, there's 48 unique characters in the modern hiragana alphabet. Okay, so Japanese actually has 3 different writing systems, and you'll be seeing a combination of writing systems. For example, this person over here, you can see there's hiragana, and there's also kanji, and then it goes back to hiragana. If you're reading Japanese manga, you're going to have a combination of all of these. In terms of sounds, Duncan, you bring up a very good point. Japanese is a phonetic language, which means it sounds exactly as it is spelled, but we'll find out more later in this slide, actually. So hiragana is one of the first systems. There's katakana, which has 46 unique characters with a few other permutations as well. Permutations, i.e. Combinations as well. If there are any mathematicians here, sorry, I know permutations, combinations aren't quite the same thing, but that's why I specifically use the word permutations here. And just looking visually at the first 5 characters of hiragana and first 5 characters in katakana, they look a little different, right? It seems like the styles are also a little different. Hiragana is a little curvier. Katakana, there's a few more straight lines, and you'll see this pattern for all of the hiragana characters and all the katakana characters as well. And then we have kanji, which for some of you may seem a little daunting at first, because it's definitely a lot more complex than your hiragana and katakana characters. There is a hidden 4th one, okay? And it's not really I wouldn't say it's particularly native to Japanese per se, but it's what we call romaji, okay? Romaji, which is literally Roman characters. As I mentioned before, our English writing system is based off of the Roman alphabet, and romaji is also based off of the Roman alphabet. So if you were to learn, if you were to start learning Japanese, you'd probably start with romaji, so you'd be able to learn how to pronounce the hiragana and katakana as well as kanji characters using the Roman characters. As I mentioned before, and as Duncan diligently mentioned, sounds. Japanese is a phonetic language, okay? And what does it mean by phonetic language? It means that pronunciation is consistent, unlike English. That means that I don't think I saw Spanish anywhere. Anyone good at Spanish? Anyone able to speak Spanish? Spanish is also, I wouldn't say it's phonetic per se, but it's like the happy middle ground where you know exactly how, if you were to learn Spanish, so the accents that are there, they show you exactly where to stress the syllable, and you may be able to read almost every single word in Spanish. Whether or not you understand the word is a different story. Japanese is similar, where you may be able to read it, but you may not be able to understand it until you get a bit of the context. I'll give you an example in English, okay? Or rather the antithesis in English. We have through, this first one, through, though, and thorough. Through, though, and thorough. The last 4 letters are the exact same, but it sounds a little different, right? Here, 2, 2, and 2. We have 3 different spellings for 2, and yet the pronunciation is the same. We do have homographs and homophones in Japanese as well, but again, pronunciation is consistent. So for example, 例えばですね、atarashi, this is atarashi. So these are 5 characters, and no matter where you see them, the pronunciation is the same. Now, the intonation might be a little different, but the pronunciation is the same. So atarashi ですね。atarashi, which means new. And if we took another example, like aru, right? To have. So atarashi, and aru. So the pronunciation is the same. It's agnostic to whatever word it follows, whatever other characters follows. Once you know the first 48 characters and how they're pronounced, you can read everything else in hiragana, no problem, because the pronunciation is consistent. I know that might have been a lot at once, but let's wash away all of our preconceptions of what Japanese is, and let's dig a little deeper. Let's take a deeper dive at learning Japanese from manga. It's going to be a deep dive through the grammar. Okay. Contrary to that slide, this might be a little dry for some of you, but I hope that this will be a little bit more informative as well. First, let's take a look at the sentence structure. How is English structured? Has anyone heard of SVO? Now type in chat here, SVO, which is subject, verb, object. Okay, subject, verb, object. That's what the order we follow that's the order that we follow in English in order to successfully create a sound sentence. So we follow SVO in English. Japanese differs in that it goes subject, object, verb, so SOV. Okay, I know that sounds a little might go over your head at the moment, but I'll give you an example here. Erika-san went to the cafe. For that same sentence, if we want to express that same sentence in Japanese, Erika-san wa kissaten ni ikimashita. So Erika-san went to the cafe. Erika-san is our subject. So we start with the subject, went, verb. Where did Erika-san go? She went to the cafe, which is our object, our indirect object. Erika-san wa kissaten ni ikimashita. So I've also put the romaji here, so at the very top, which shows you how to pronounce these characters using Roman characters. I always pause myself because I'm about to say Roman numerals, but they're not Roman numerals. But I digress. So subject, verb, object versus subject, object, verb. This means that someone mentioned it's hard to determine the past tense, right? For was it Chinese? Yes, Duncan mentioned, yeah, the past tense may not be as apparent as English. And that is similar in Japanese as well. You may not know if it's present or past tense until the very end of the sentence, because the verb always appears at the end of the sentence. We also have particles or postpositions, okay? I put quote unquote postpositions because they're, in English we have prepositions, right? Erika-san went where? Went to the cafe. So to precedes the cafe. So to comes before, because it's a preposition, it's pre, it comes before this piece. If you notice up here, kissaten, which is a cafe, ni ikimashita, ni, which is our particle or postposition, it comes afterwards. So that's why wa and ni are examples of our particles or postpositions. They tell us what part of speech each item is. 例えばですね, for example, I go to school at 7 a.m. For many of you, I'm sure school is out, so yay! So I hope you're not waking up at 7 a.m. just for that. Some of you may be waking up for camp instead, but normally, perhaps you go to school at 7 a.m. 午前7時に学校へ行きます。午前7時に学校へ行きます。So the ni here is like at, and it, oh, my apologies, there is a little typo there. Let me just fix up the color. That should be purple instead. Let's try this. Are there any questions so far? Does this make sense for everyone here. And if you don't have any questions at the moment, that's okay. Or if you want to wait till later for that, that's fine as well. So you'll have an opportunity to ask questions later on. So that's particles and postpositions. Hi, onomatopoeias. Okay, fun word in English, also fun in Japanese as well. They're like sound effects, right? And sound effects tend to be a little bit more prevalent in manga. Okay, in Western comics, they're used just for exaggeration, but again, it's much more omnipotent in manga. So what I'm talking about is like things like wham and blam. Those are examples of sound effects and onomatopoeias in Western comics. So they're words that sound like they mean what they sound like. If that makes any sense. There are more nuances expressed in Japanese. There's many onomatopoeias in Japanese. They're usually baked into a panel, into like a manga panel, to add more emphasis. And hello to those of you who just joined us. We were just trying to learn how we can learn from manga, how we can learn Japanese from manga. And we're just talking about onomatopoeias, perfect timing. Here's some examples, okay? This is not an exhaustive list. This is two of, I dare say, thousands of onomatopoeias. If someone's about to like introduce themselves or they're going to interview here, Takeshi-kun here is saying, hajimemashite, waku waku, waku waku. You just that's like that just indicates like nervousness or also a little bit of excitement. You know, when you're about to present, this might be meta of me. I also felt the waku waku just before this as well, because I was about to present, I was about to go on stage, and you feel that little bit of anxiety and nervousness too. So waku waku means that. And you usually see it in a panel like this, just on the side. You might also see when things happen, like ja, that's the sound of like of a tap turning on like that. It's just to add a little bit more emphasis and a little more dynamics into the manga strip, like so, manga panel, like so. Some of you may be also consuming anime as well as a medium. You may not see as many onomatopoeias just prevalent like this, but because you already have the sound, right? This replaces the lack of sound in your print media, which you can find again at your local library. Hi, the three systems. Whoops, did I skip something? No, that was it. Okay, the animation is just a little off, so apologies for that. Once again, let's revisit the three writing systems. Okay, we have hiragana. Hiragana, the first of the three. They're typically used for words that are native to Japanese. Okay. Katakana, they're typically used for non-native words, not exclusively, but for the most part. So, for example, non-Japanese names and loan words that we get, gairaigo desu ne, borrowed words from other languages. We may write that in katakana instead. And then we have kanji, which are characters that are shared with the Japanese writing system, or the Chinese writing system, my apologies. Kanji characters, they're used to improve readability in a hiragana-filled sentence. There's a little asterisk here, okay? And what I want to point out is some characters exist in Japanese that don't exist in Chinese and vice versa, like eki, for example. And some may also carry a slight different meaning between languages. I've been told that watashi, this may mean something a little different in Chinese as well. So you're probably wondering, honestly, why in the world do we have three different writing systems in the first place? Maybe I get having hiragana and katakana, hiragana for native words, katakana for non-native words, but why do we need kanji? Once again, kanji is used to improve readability in a hiragana-filled sentence. And I will prove it to you in the following. Yes, and one more thing is furigana. Furigana appears as a reading guide for kanji characters. So kanji can look like this, but you might see hiragana on top, or sometimes katakana, depending on the situation. So it will show you how to read the kanji characters. So once you know hiragana and katakana, you'll be able to, it'll be easier to read kanji, or you'll know from the furigana how to properly read the kanji characters, because some of them have multiple readings depending on the situation and context, okay? So in practice, はい、今日は東京から京都まで電車で行きました。今日は東京から京都まで電車で行きました。It's a little jumbled, right? It's where does which word starts where and which word ends where, and what it's just one, visually it's not very clear. By having the kanji characters here, so kyo comes here, it's replaced by the kanji characters. 今日は東京から京都まで電車にで行きました。My apologies, I should have mentioned this earlier. This sentence says today I'm going from Tokyo to Kyoto I went to Kyoto from Tokyo by train. Okay, so kanji characters help improve visual quality, clarity, excuse me. And furigana here helps provide some guidance with pronunciation. Because this character, for example, next to this character, it's read as kyo, but if it's by itself, it could be ima. So there are multiple readings, and furigana helps provide that guidance. Many manga series may have furigana to assist you with the reading. Some of the older ones, I've noticed it a lot more from some of the series from the 70s and 80s. They may not have that, or if they're geared towards adults or adolescents, they may not have all of the furigana. They might just have it for some of the harder kanji characters. And of course, you can always add color and more to further improve clarity. 今日は東京から京都まで電車で行きました。So today I went from Tokyo to Kyoto by train. Here's another use case. Suppose we have another motivation for having multiple writing systems. Suppose we have a robot that speaks. How do we differentiate from its speech patterns? So in English, you might have a robot in like a comic series or something that says, "Hello, I am an android," and you see that it's written in all caps. Right? It doesn't mean that it's yelling at you or anything, but let's show that it's sort of unnatural, right? Non-human-like. In Japanese, we do the same thing. We do a similar thing rather. Here he says, "Konnichiwa, watashi wa android desu." So hiragana and katakana are swapped. The things that are in blue are normally written in hiragana, and the things in red are normally written in katakana. But it's swapped when like a robot or someone who you might have a character who's just learning Japanese for the first time or something. So this shows like some uneasiness, right, in Japanese. So that there's some benefit to having multiple writing systems this way. Also, something fun with furigana, which are like entendres and double meanings. So for example, we have Kanda-san here who says, あれは田中の本じゃないかしら. Sorry, let me do this a little better. あれは田中の本じゃないかしら. So that's Tanaka's book, isn't it? So there's furigana here to help, but this is normally read as Tanaka. But you might see the following in a manga panel instead. You might say, あれはあんたの本じゃないかしら. So anta is like a more familial way of referring to you, right? Normally it's anata, but anta is kind of it can be a little rude, but it's good if you're just talking to friends or whatnot. So both readings of these two kanji characters, Tanaka and Anta, give an inkling of how Kanda-san and Tanaka-san's acquaintanceship. So just by having that extra writing system can really help add some more entendres. And oh, sorry about that. There we go, like so. I mentioned this before, context, context, context. Japanese is a very context-sensitive language, which means we often drop parts of a sentence, such as a subject or an object. And you're probably thinking, how in the world can we drop like the subject and the object? Well, it's very much possible. For example, お姉さんも学校に行きますか? Is your sister also going to school? お姉さんも学校に行きますか? Is your sister also going to school? And then a reply could just be はい、行きます。はい、行きます, which means yes. はい、yes, 行きます, going. So really if we were transliterate it as in word for word, it'll be yes, going. But we've removed the she and removed the to school because in our conversation, it's implied that we already know we've established that we're talking about the sister and that they're going to school. So Japanese can be a little tough at times because this context is dropped. Whereas in English, yeah, we do drop context at times. If I say, oh, hey, is your sister going to school? Also going to school at 7 a.m. this morning? You would say, oh, yeah, she's also going. Right. So you don't have to say going to school and you don't have to say at 7 a.m. That's implied. We do drop some context. Japanese drops even more context at times. So 注意してください. Just be careful with that. There are also distinct levels of formality in Japanese. English has a much more relaxed gradient, right? We have business English and casual English, but it's much more apparent in Japanese. 例えばですね、学校に行きますか? Are you going to school? You can answer this in one of many ways. You can say, standardly, はい、行きます. Yes, I'm going. Or casually, you can say, if you know you're telling your friends, 行く. Yeah, I'm going. Yeah, very, very, very casual. Or you might say something like, はい、はい、参ります. Yes, I shall go. Not quite the same translation, but roughly gives you an idea, right? This is my version of localizing, right? So it's not quite the same word for word translation because they all mean yes, I will, I'm going, right? But I've distinguished it between standard, casual, and formal, just to give you a rough idea of the nuances and the feeling of it. Which brings me to my next point, a quick discussion about localization and versus translation. We're just running out of time, so I'm just going to show you one of these here. Local translation, again, is when we're directly translating from one language to the other versus localization, right? Where you might be changing it a little bit. So it's not a direct translation, but the same idea is carried forth in both languages. So here's an example of one of the translations or localizations. Well then, I don't know how this will go, but let's begin the meeting for those who hide in the shadows. Notice that here it's written in bold like this. Might be a localized example of this would be just showing that emphasis, but in a slightly different way, where the characters are spaced out like this. Here, this character is sort of scared and whatnot, so that's why there's like a little stuttering here. Like, but it doesn't say that. Doesn't mean that she has like a stutter in Japanese or anything. I'll give you another example here. わかりました。おかしな味はおかしおかしな味のおかし, which means like the snacks have like an odd flavor, right? Which doesn't really mean anything. It's quote unquote funny in Japanese because the pronunciation is similar here. In English, the translation is completely different. It's been localized because we're just trying to get like a funny idea across, right? Like we're trying to get a joke across. So that means we have to swap that joke for something else. Okay, I'm learning to integrate because it's a great day because she's behind the grate. Okay, and I'll skip over to here now, right? Because we're just running out of time. So where do I begin? Where do you begin from by learning manga? And where do you begin to learn Japanese? I do have a few manga recommendations, and Han-san actually has 2 of those books with her right now, so maybe she can show them later on today. First, oh yes, so you can see she has a camera on. She's got 2 of the books. First, there's anime-manga.jp run by the Japan Foundation. It has original bilingual manga, so I highly recommend that. There's Bakabon as well as Doraemon. They might seem a little kiddie at first. If you can see Hana-san's screen, she has the 2 novels out there. These 2 graphic novels are bilingual, which means it shows both the English and the Japanese. So it's a good way to see both. You can see both the English and the Japanese writing as well. So it's a good way to learn through that. There are other mediums for immersion as well. I'm sure many of you, based on some of your profile pictures, you're already consuming anime, podcasts, games, streams of any sort. Textbooks and lessons, those are always a good way to learn the more traditional way. And if you're getting started, I recommend starting with learning how to read Hiragana and Katakana first and going from there. The grammar will come as you proceed. And of course, bring a friend with you. Always great to learn a language with a friend because there's always a speaking component. So try to encourage one of your friends, a classmate, a family member, learn together, right? There's no silly questions when you're learning together at the same time, and you have a conversation partner as well. はい、どうも皆さんおはようございます。もう2時ですけれども、good morning. I know it's already in the afternoon, but good morning. If I've caused you to fall asleep in the past 50 minutes, that's a-okay. This one screen will just summarize everything that we've done so far. And if you've walked in a little later, this is a nice quick summary. So if you've learned nothing today, I hope you learned these fine points. Number 1, manga is a medium that can give a glimpse of Japanese culture and language. Text in manga can be written using a combination of 3 sets of writing in the writing of Japanese. I need to rewrite that a little bit, sorry. Hiragana, katakana, and kanji. Text in manga can give some insight on formalities, etiquette, entendres, humor, and more as well. And of course, manga is a great way to learn Japanese, but it is one of many ways, right? This can be used to supplement your other ways of learning, or it could be your main way of learning, but you have other mediums or media to supplement that learning. So with that said, this concludes our quick little presentation. I hope you enjoyed that. This is a very, very, very quick primer to how Japanese can be learned through manga. And I think bilingual manga series are probably a very good way to do so. But there are many other ways as well. And you also learn a lot of nuances, even through the English translated manga series too. Sometimes you'll see some footnotes and whatnot. Those really help as well. At this point, I would like to open the floor for any questions. I also have a little feedback form. Whether you enjoyed this or not, I always value your feedback. If you take the time to write down your feedback, I will take the time to read it as well. So I'm going to post a little Google form link in the chat right now. So you can take a moment to fill that out. It's 3 quick questions, 2 things you enjoyed about this presentation, 2 things you would have liked to see, and of course, any additional comments or questions for me. So with that said, are there any questions, comments, criticisms, or any of that sort? My apologies, just give me 1 second. Let me grab a drink first. Hi, すみませんでした. Hello. So questions. Are you teaching Japanese yourself for adult learners, and if so, which level? At the moment, I am teaching high school. I've taught high school. I've taught elementary school as well. The youngest class I've taught was kindergartners, Japanese, and oh, they're just adorable. And when it's especially fun when they have barely mastered English and they're learning a different language altogether. It's great to see how they're able to immerse themselves in both languages. And I also teach Japanese at the high school level, but they're for beginners. So we don't discriminate whether you're whatever age you are, whether you're, as long as you have like a positive learning attitude, more than happy to have you in the classroom. And then also, granted you're also respectful to your classmates as well. No silly questions in the classroom. Okay. only one silly teacher, perhaps. Hi, 他の質問がありますか? Any other questions? Anything that you want to ask? I know some of you may be just filling in the form right now, so I really appreciate that. Sorry, the avatar that you use to do this presentation is very interesting. VTuber ですね. Yeah, it's a VTuber model, and I use that for my classes as well. Always fun to do that. It makes it a little bit more interactive, right? Especially when some of these classes are online now, and it's hard to have that human connection. This is the next closest thing as well. Sorry, I still have my keyboard up. Let me put that down. There we go. How do you do it? You just create a VTuber model. That involves using programs like Blender, 3D modeling and whatnot. If you don't want to do that, there's also Live 2D, which is probably about a lot of the other VTubers that you see on YouTube to do that. Tekla, yes. Yeah, it's like Jinda has a Tekla picture already, so yeah, they use a Live 2D. Yeah, and you can always commission it too. It's a little expensive if you commission it, just heads up there. Or just learn the software. My background is in computer engineering, so it's too bad to learn a new piece of software. I'm just catching up with the chat right now. Any recommendations for a dictionary having the Hiragana and the Kanji? Good question. For print, Hana-san, do you have any suggestions for dictionaries? I have an online suggestion. I usually recommend this to students, jisho.org. It takes both Hiragana, it also takes Romaji and Kanji. It takes all forms, or all four of those types of writing. And that's very good. Any textbooks? Let's see. Usually there's the Japanese for blank people series, which is Japanese for busy people, Japanese for young people. Those are very context sensitive if you want just like a quick and dirty way to learn the language. I personally like Genki. Genki is very, it's a little more expensive. You may be able to get a copy at your local library as well. But it's very, very thorough as well. Any other good textbooks? There is also Marigoto. Also by the Japan Foundation. Marigoto, try to find the site, Marigoto Plus. I recommend going through this site too. There's lots of videos and there's a transcript with those videos as well to learn. That's always great. And that's assuming you have zero knowledge. So it really picks up from zero. Duncan asks, any other learning tips? Any other tips on learning? Apps, Netflix. Japan Foundation also has a few apps on the App Store. They're called like memory hints for kanji and also for hiragana and katakana. If you're consuming any other media, really, if you're consuming any other media, whether it's anime or it's YouTube videos or anything like that, try to add some subtitles there, right? Whether it's Romaji subtitles, there are videos like that, or with Japanese subtitles, that it helps. And if you have a working knowledge of Japanese, of the writing system, try and turn off subtitles once, and then watch, just try and focus on the listening first, then focus on, then may rewatch it and have the subtitles to just check your understanding. Like so. Kayla, thank you. Yes, to online Japanese study fair on August 4th. Yeah, great. Thank you for suggesting that. Yes, as Hana-san said, Genki or Japanese for busy people are always popular. Genki, if you were to go to like your Indigo or Barnes & Nobles, they might not have it immediately. It's not usually available. You might want to check your local library first. And then if not, you might have to speak with your local bookstore to, they might have to special order that. But Japanese for busy people or Japanese for young people, there's a few other variants of that. They are usually available just off the shelf. And they're $15, $20, give or take, not too bad. If you prefer to have that like a physical textbook like that, and I understand some of you may prefer learning that way too. It's a great way to immerse yourself in the media. はい。他の質問がありますか？聞きたいことがありますか? Any other questions? Any other comments? Thoughts at the moment? Oh, and thank you, Hasan. Hasan has also just posted ebooks of Genki at the Japan Foundation's digital library. So thank you very much for that. That might be your gateway into learning this language. I'm thrilled to see a linguist present to this today. Merci beaucoup. Wait, there again. Yeah. Linguistics has always been a fun little side thing for me. So, and again, thank you, Hana-san, for providing lots and lots of resources through the Japan Foundation in the chat. Okay, you can just click on those links and maybe bookmark them. That would help. I'd like to thank the Vaughan Public Libraries again for arranging this and hosting this session in order for us to connect and to get an idea of just how many Japanese learners there are in the world. Like, we're all connected digitally like this, and I hope that you found this presentation at least a little helpful, if not helpful, at least just a little entertaining. You're welcome, you're welcome. Any other questions, comments? Wonderful. Thank you.
All right, I'll just jump in to say thank you so much, Alan, and to the Japan Foundation as well for being here with us this afternoon. That was a great presentation. Yeah, I certainly learned a lot. So thank you so much for that. We got some really great links in the chat from the Japan Foundation. I'm just going to add our website as well. And we do have resources in our collections for learning Japanese. We have a few different books, a few different kits that can help with that. So yeah, feel free to ask us as well for any information on that. And we also have many manga series in English and some in French as well in our collections. So if you're interested in picking up a series, learning more, we have some anime as well, movies and television shows in our collection as well. So yeah, please, by all means, come and ask us about that as well. We'd be happy to help you out. But yeah, check out those links from the Japan Foundation, jump on their site, learn a little bit more about them. And yeah, thank you so much. We had a question, will the links be shared post-presentation? I can maybe come up with a list of links and maybe send them out to the email contacts that I had earlier. And that way people can learn a little bit more and do a little more research afterwards. Okay, so yeah, with that, it's 3 o'clock. So thank you everybody for coming. Thank you again to our presenters and to the Japan Foundation. And yeah, please check out our website for more Passport to Vaughan presentations, more programming that we have coming up for all ages for the rest of the summer and then for the rest of the year. So thank you again, everybody, so much for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming, everyone. Stay cool.